Growing up in the South, I've always wondered why private school education was so common. I began to wonder if trends of private school secondary education were evident in the North, yet I did not find similar trends between the two. In the South, there is greater movement toward private schools and a greater number of them in general. For example, the state of Florida has 832 9th through 12th grade private schools, while the state of New York has 718. Considering that the population of New York is approximately 1 million more people than Florida and includes a greater percentage of people under the age of 18, one would assume more schools to be prevalent in New York, yet this is not the case. I would argue that the rise of private schools in the South is an effect of political segregation. Resistance to integration between the years of 1966 to 74 manifested into the creation of private schools. The question of why private schools evolved was highlighted in an article by Kenneth Andrews of Harvard University. He attributes the case of white flight as a response to state action. Following Brown versus the Board of Education, the South witnessed an increase in white citizens' councils that sponsored 150 private schools by 1969. For example, Andrews recounts how employees, students, and parents of a school in Canton, Mississippi renovated a tent factory over their Christmas break to serve as a new private school. Typically, resistance was common within state legislatures. In Mississippi, the state legislature provided a tuition stipend of $240 annually to students attending private schools. Also, because of the reducing numbers in the public school system, the system sustained a $12 million budget cut in 1970. Using the state of Mississippi as a representation of Southern resistance, Andrews statistically found that the proportion of black school-age children in a district has a statistically significant relationship to white academy enrollment. Evident throughout much of the South was a cry toward private schools. This article was taken from the Times-Picayune of New Orleans in 1958, calling private schools the answer to integration. Lastly, I interviewed a teacher born in Mississippi in 1943. She left the South soon after Brown v. Board of Education, but has now returned to Louisiana and made it her home. She experienced teaching in both Southern and non-Southern schools, as well as radical resistance to integration. I asked Ms. Thomas the following question. Growing up in the South, did you see a visible evolution of private schools?
Yes, I did. I saw an evolution of private schools, not so much for African Americans, you know, but I think I saw that rise of privatization more for the other races. At that time, we were trying to get integration. It was a long time coming, but it was coming, and some parents could see that, you know, and so they were pulling their kids out, sending them to like private schools long ago.
As a result, this push to create private schools in the South has left lasting effects in Southern education. The first effect is a physical difference between private and public school resources. On a short drive around town, I visited a few public and private schools. Schools such as Polk Elementary, Baton Rouge High, and Bruley High have large disparities in facilities in comparison to St. Joseph's Academy, Dunham School, and many more private schools in the area. These physical disparities effectively contribute to the quality of education received by students. The second effect is the separation of race and class. An article dated in 2008 described a noticeable trend of rapid resegregation in Charlotte-Mecklenburg School District. In addition, because of higher tuition costs of private schools, public schools increasingly serve students of low socioeconomic status. While others in the South recognize the poor results of public schools, they are moving toward a private education. Now there is a visible class distinction between public and private schools. In conclusion, because this almost dual school system is alive in the South and not as evident in the non-South, there are growing disparities not just between Southern public and private schools, but public education in the South versus non-South. This has created a disturbing inequality of education within the United States, which will have lasting effects for years to come.